What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video, coming at you with an updated Excalibur. The former pseudo-exalted weapons, for example Korra, Atlas, are now exalted Warframes, similar to Excalibur, Baruch, and Valkyr. Not only that, we were now given the option to use additional mods that we couldn't use before, and on top of that, we got an arcane slot for all the exalted weapons. Yes, including Warframes like Mesa and Excalibur. And this opened up new ways to mod the Warframes, increasing their overall power. Now, Excalibur was already an okay frame, but now he's even better. Because if we show you right now, his Exalted Blade can now build up combo with the waves, which is a huge quality of life. Not only that, it can trigger arcanes like melee influence. You can trigger your Tennokai, and once you trigger Tennokai, you get the option of performing a heavy attack, and he has a new heavy attack, which releases an energy wave. And you can follow up with that energy wave with your slash dash. As you can see, we just destroyed these Xmas units. Slash dash is no longer a pseudo-exalted. Those who didn't know, Excalibur was the only one who had a pseudo-exalted and an exalted. Titania is a different story. That was just a buggy interaction. His slash dash required a different melee for it to function. However, now, slash dash will scale off of your exalted weapon mods. This means if you mod your Exalted Blade, your slash dash will benefit from those mods. However, if you replace your Exalted Blade with another ability, you will no longer be able to benefit from the mods on your Exalted Blade, meaning your slash dash will hit like a wet noodle. For example, this old slash dash build, which scaled off of your stat stick, now will scale off of your Exalted Blade. However, as you can see on the bottom right, I did replace my Exalted Blade, and when I try to attack enemies, it barely does anything because it has no mods. So if you're going to build a slash dash build with Wrathful Advance or Roar, you would have to replace the second or third ability. So you can no longer benefit from Precision Intensify. Now, in terms of stats, nothing did change with the Exalted Blade. However, this can benefit from the Galvanize mods and Blood Rush, which you couldn't before. We also get the Arcane Adapter slot. This means you can slot in anything, especially the busted melee influence. Now, another thing for those who don't know, Excalibur has an augment called Chromatic Blade. Chromatic Blade increases your status chance and converts your IPS on Exalted Blade into an element. For example, right now, without Chromatic Blade, you can see my Exalted Blade deals IPS, Impact, Puncture, and Slash, and the status chance is at 15%. With Chromatic Blade equipped, I now lose my Impact, Puncture, and Slash. I gain an elemental damage modifier alongside increase in status chance. How do we get this elemental damage modifier? Well, it's tied to your emissive colors. So if you would go to Appearance and edit your emissive colors, it will only prioritize the first emissive color. Blues and purples will give you electricity. So right here, this is a purple. You also get electricity. Blues will give you electricity. Now, why do we need electricity? Well, it's because we're going to be using melee influence. Because we already get electricity from Chromatic Blade and Exalted Blade, we now don't need to actually mod electricity on our weapons. We can focus on other modifiers to increase our damage output and quality of life. So first, let's understand how this build actually works before we get into the build itself, because that way you can understand every single layer that goes into this loadout. First, let's start off with our companion. It is the Worm Prime. You can see it's attacking enemies, and this is just here for a synth set bonus, so we can get additional health orbs, which will also help us with energy. At the same time, the worm does replenish our shields and prevents one status effect every few seconds. Now, as you can see, I did replace my second ability with Roar. Roar is a universal damage multiplier and is also coded as a faction damage multiplier. So this will boost my overall damage on Excalibur's Exalted Blade. And for the focus school, surprisingly, I'm not using Madurai, but Zenrik instead. Zenrik will increase my energy gains because for this loadout, I am running negative efficiency. Let's have a look at how do we start this build. You can go into your operator, activate your Hardened Wellspring with Zeneric. You can see right there, Hardened Wellspring. This gives you a 20% increase in your strength. And within this Hardened Wellspring, you can cast your abilities. And that will snapshot to your active abilities. So again, double cast your first ability on your operator. Roar, Exalted Blade. And just swing away. If that was too hard, let me do it again. Hardened Wellspring on your operator. Roar, Exalted Blade. Swing your Exalted Blade. That's literally it. That's it. And there's other tips when it comes to movement, thanks to your slash dash. So as you're landing, you can cancel the land with a slash dash. You can propel yourself forward with a melee strike and then a slash dash. And why is my parkour velocity pretty high? It's because I'm using the Praetus. It's a vanilla incarnate melee that gives us bonuses when it comes to movement. And that's pretty much it. So let's take a look at how we put this build together. Starting off with Excalibur, I do have 2 Tau Forge casting speed shards. This is here just to improve my casting speed. Otherwise, you can change these to energy on pickup. I prefer casting speed because it increases my mobility and action speed. And 3 red Tau Forge to increase my strength. As you can see on the bottom right there, I already have 45% additional strength because of these 3 shards. And now onto the Excalibur build. For the Arcanes, Molt Augmented is mandatory. This grants you 60% strength after 250 kills. And once you achieve 250 kills, just deactivate your Exalted Blade and then reactivate it, so you can benefit from the strength increase. Because unfortunately, it doesn't snapshot immediately into your Exalted Blade. Now for the second Arcane slot, this is personal preference. I prefer Aegis, because this is going to give me some flexibility, survivability, and comfort. However, you can also increase your attack speed even further with Arcane Strike. But for me, I already feel like I'm already getting enough attack speed, so I don't really need this. But then again, it's down to personal preference. For the aura, you can see I have an Omniforma here. I can use any aura I want. However, I'll be using Corrosive Projection. This is an increase to your damage because enemies around me will have minus 18% armor, which is a damage increase overall. For the Exilus, best mod in the game for your foot maxing, because spending less time on your butt is a huge DPS increase. Legit, like if you're on the ground, you're not doing anything. You're just getting backshotted by enemies. So let's quickly go over our strength increases. We'll start off with Blind Rage. Yes, this is a very taxing mod on your build, as it reduces your efficiency, but you don't have to worry about that, because of all the other synergies that we have to deal with a negative efficiency. And Umbral Intensify here. These are the only 2 mods I'll be using for strength increases. And let's not forget, for the Augment, I'll be using Chromatic Blade. As it reads, Exalted Blade's damage type changes depending on Excalibur's emissive color. And status chance is increased by 300%, and this scales with strength. So if you hover over Exalted Blade, as you can see, we get 864%. And guess what? This is going to go even higher when we build up our strength with Molt Augmented. Not only that, the damage of Exalted Blade increases furthermore. Now with the 2 dash polarities here, I'll be running the goated Prime Flow and Equilibrium. Prime Flow increases my energy pool to 427, while Equilibrium converts health and energy orb pickups. Because I'll be full on health all the time, every health orb I'm picking up will then turn into energy orbs, and vice versa. Now let's take a look at duration. But before that, have a look at our drain per second. Because we have negative efficiency, our drain went up to 3.88. If we use a duration mod, that goes down to 2.5 seconds, which is actually not bad. However, if you want to reduce this duration even further, you can use something like Narrow-Minded. As you can see right now, 1.95, which is not that much of a difference, but sometimes you could tell. And this does increase your buff duration. However, you do lose range. So mobility is then dropped, which I personally do not like. But if you don't care too much about slash dash and its mobility, you can use Narrow-Minded. However, I prefer the movement and flexibility, so I will use Primed Continuity instead. Now we're left with 2 slots. These 2 slots here are left for additional survivability. I run primed redirection for the large shield pool and fast deflection for the shield recharge and recharge delay, paired up with Aegis. Again, this is a comfort playstyle. I don't have to panic, worry about doing extra steps like rolling guard, or even depending on replenishing my shields with catalyzing shields. You could do that, but then I would suggest not running Blind Rage instead, because you're going to be casting a bit more abilities. But this is the final loadout that I've been using, and it's very comfortable, and we're dealing a lot of damage. Now this takes us to Exalted Blade. As you can see, we have Viral and Electricity. Our electricity is coming from Chromatic Blade, and we have modded Viral. So let's take a look. In the X list, I have Discipline's Merit, so every 4 melee attacks grants me a Tennokai activation. Tennokai allows me to get a free heavy attack in, and your heavy attacks will scale from your built-up combo and crit and elemental damage modifiers. So it's gonna do a lot of damage. Pressure point here. This is for consistency. Now, if you don't care too much about consistency and you're going to be priming a lot, which is up to you, then you can run Condition Overload. But for consistent damage, Prime Pressure Point is going to be your best friend. Our crit chance increases are coming from Blood Rush. This is a 440% increase to our crit chance at max combo. Galvanized Steel is a 110% increase right there. And then finally, Gladiator Vice not only increases our attack speed, but it also increases our crit chance per combo, similar to Blood Rush. So consider this a mini Blood Rush. And all of these crit chance increases are additive to each other, because at base, we only have 15% crit chance. And Berserker Fury is our second attack speed mod, so these two are going to be our main attack speed mods. For our elemental modifiers, I have Viral with Vicious Frost and Virulent Scourge. Both of these are 60/60s, meaning they give me elemental damage and an increase to my status chance. This is here to balance out the elemental weighting. Then finally, Melee Elementalist. This is another damage multiplier. This increases your status damage. All your electric procs and damage over time will benefit from this mod. And this mod is multiplicative to faction damage. Roar is faction damage, so this is how you'll be dealing even more damage. For those who want to run Galvanized Elementalist for the increase in status chance, you can, but you don't necessarily need to. And of course, do not forget Melee Influence on melee electric status. So for this to spread, you need to apply an electric status effect on an enemy before they die. And this allows you to spread all of those procs along with your modded elements, which happens to be Viral. So you're priming every enemy with Viral as they're taking electric damage over time. And all of those procs will scale off your crit modifiers, elemental damage increases, base damage, melee elementalists, and faction damage modifiers. And because we have a lot of status chance, we're immediately able to trigger electricity and nuke these lot of enemies with barely any combo. And now for my utility weapons, I'm running the other half, which is the Praetus. I just changed the name. You want to have Drifting Grace here for Evolution 2, Evolved Ascension for Evolution 4. That's about it. This will give you additional movement and parkour velocity. Very nice to have for utility. However, if you want faster animations, add attack speed. And now moving on to my Worm Prime. And this is pretty much the build. You want to have Guardian here to replenish your shields immediately after they break, and you can reduce the cooldown thanks to Manifold Bond. And this is why Arcane Barrier is a waste of an arcane, because Guardian exists and it does a way better job. And it's more consistent. And then moving on, I have Negate, so this cleanses me of a status effect. And then I have Assault Mode here, which allows my Sentinel to attack. It's a deconstruct, so it drops health orbs, so your companion doesn't have to kill them. So it just tags an enemy, you kill them, you get additional health orbs. Tenacious Bond, this increases my crit damage. And for my weapon, I'm using the Burst Laser. Why the Burst Laser? Because for one, it's a secondary. Why does that matter? Because of a few things. I can use Augur mods, which convert energy spent into shields, and on top of that, it has decent crit chance, so I can run a crit chance mod, so my companion's crit chance is over 50%, and then that increases the crit damage I get from Tenacious Bond. So yeah, folks, this is the new and improved Excalibur, able to nuke with his melee effortlessly, thanks to the Exalted Changes. And what makes this even better is that he's a starter frame, and I am using the actual starter frame, not the Excal Prime, because that's a Founders Pack edition, and not Umbra. Now, for those asking, why don't I use Umbra? It's because Umbra is so buggy. If you like having your Helminth abilities and all your buffs active without being removed, then don't use Umbra. And if you don't really care and you just want to use Umbra because of the scarf, apparently that's people's reason, and they already invested into him, then forget about ever using your operator, because once you do, you lose all your buffs. And if you don't want that to happen, you're forced to use an augment mod to disable his passive. So now you have to use up an entire mod slot just so you can disable his passive, so you don't lose your buffs. Anyway, folks, that has been it from me. I do hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video. If you did, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. For more Warframe content, streams, and so much more, do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.